Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me out there. And hope you're having a good night. We had a pretty hot scorcher in Alabama today. We had some cool days. And then about, oh, say Tuesday, it warmed back up where the humidity came back up. And so today it was pretty high humidity. It felt like summer again. I mean, getting out there and you just sitting there sweating, doing nothing, but high humidity and temperatures in the upper 90s. And it just, you don't want to do nothing. Hi, guys. Hiram and Joshua. Mike. Hi, Mike. How you doing? Bumby. Hello. Bo Boumbi. Bumby. I'm guessing. I don't mean to be insulting. It's just my southern tongue doesn't roll that off easy. I'll just say Mr. B. How about that? John. Hello. And Will. Hello. JB of Caudale Knives. Hello. How y'all doing tonight? Well, the topic I had said that I wanted to talk about tonight was Django 630. Want one of those packs? We will do that. That this first 20 run that we're talking about, the Nighthawks, was a shakedown cruise. Really, it's where we could buy this lot of material that would make roughly 20. And we could work it out. And because Jay, who's doing it, you make up jigs so you can fast put on all of those sewed loops. You got to have the right size dowel or the right way to do it. And so you're working it out. And a lot of times you'll do it one way, and we'll try this a little bit, and you'll speed it up by you figure out how it all goes. But anytime you're manufacturing something from scratch in a production, you got to figure out the assembly line, when to do this, when to do that. And so we did a run of 20 to iron it all out. And as soon as we get it all taken care of, I promise you, I'll announce and we'll go for something bigger a little later on. So just hang on, they're coming. Oh, John, Ben, Herbert. Oh, am I ever ready for fall camping? Bet on it. Hello, Terry and Joshua. You know about Bill Edwards' 1860 Army? I know quite a bit about 1860 Army, but I'm not ringing a bell about the Edwards 1860. Sorry. Like some dude. Hello there. Thank you. But as far as fall camping, I hope, not this weekend, but next weekend. I've got some friends coming, and we're going to go to the lake, and we're going to camp out for like 3 days. And here's that dreaded 2-letter word that screws up everything. If we don't have a Category 3 hurricane sitting in the Gulf coming into my area. Not Fiona, but another thing that's down lower. It's actually below the equator. It's actually in the southern hemisphere, and it's skimming along the bottom of the very top of South America. And if it doesn't get tore up, it will be drawn up into the Gulf. And so by next Wednesday, they say it could be a Cat 3 sitting in the Gulf. And then you've got a high pressure sitting in Texas, and a thing sitting offshore. So it's either going to curve into North Florida or go into Louisiana or Maine. So I'm hoping it'll fizzle out. It'll get drugged and turned over into Mexico or something like that, because I want to go camping. I am so ready for camping. Daniel Cold Smoked Bacon. There's a name for you. Hi there. Joshua, thank you very much. I do the best I can. Hello, Brad in Virginia. Years ago, when I used to work multiple jobs, and I was a district manager for this company, and that was from 7 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. And then from 5 o'clock p.m. till 10 o'clock, I worked at the PetSmart in Dothan as a stock boy slinging dog food, because that was my exercise plan. So I was a manager here, and I was a stock boy there. And so being around PetSmart, you got to see a lot of accidents with dogs because they let you bring the dogs in. The epic one that everybody that I mentioned to go, oh dear God, yes, was a Saint Bernard named Susie who had explosive diarrhea. It was unbelievable. Oh my God. Hello, Pam. And Trapper, hello. And Pink is in the house. Hello, sir. So, yeah. I remember people were running in abject terror away from this dog. Oh, yeah. So, Terry, getting ready for bow season. When is our bow season? It normally starts somewhere in the middle of 10th, 12th, 13th of October. I have bow hunted in the past. I used to teach archery to Boy Scouts, and I hunted with a plain old hickory bow. That was something quiet, didn't make a lot of attention. And usually whenever I was hunting with a bow is I didn't want to disturb landowners because a lot of time I wasn't far from the house from a landowner. You know, that pasture right over there along that tree line right down there. And I used a bow. And they're very effective as long as you learn to hit and you understand the limitations. It can be a very challenging and very effective way to hunt. Let's see. Germany, hello. How you doing? CHW Web Education, hello. Stephen Ledring, thank you very much. Whatever it is, me and Bear will be happy to look at it, etc. Latvia, Nikki, hello. David, you're in Ireland, hello. Yeah, Bear and I were meeting a couple hours ago and talking about his channel. And we're thinking of calling it somewhere or something around the idea of Bear's Old Ways or something along that line. And so we've got some of his equipment. We've got trying to tentatively get him his camera in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the Old Ways that's already on my channel and just duplicate it and post it onto his channel and then go over there. He'll be doing his own videos and we'll still do videos together, but he'll do stuff on his channel and I'll do some stuff and then for his channel, get his channel rolling. So that a lot of that stuff will be going. And announcement, I have started a Rumble account and it's Blackie Thomas on Rumble. I only got one video up there and it's one I recently posted. I just duplicated it. Why did I do a Rumble? It's because there's a lot of things going on and y'all know it, that should I suddenly disappear from YouTube, nobody's actively trying to do anything, but should I suddenly just disappear from YouTube, I've got almost all of my videos stored on hard drives where I could go over there and load. So I'm going to start doing that. And Rumble doesn't have the same limitations I would have saying things that I have in YouTube. And so I'm looking at that channel be someplace I can do more of my firearms oriented stuff. I can do reviews and stuff, more hunting stuff and things like that. And I'm thinking about taking and reposting my stealth videos that have been really popular here lately and moving that over there, because part of the limitation of the stealth videos to me is I can't talk about certain things on YouTube because that would upset YouTube. And so got to stay within their rules, stay in their lane, and I understand that. So if you're going to be in the house, you got to play by their rules. But I could go over there and post those videos and be able to be more free to say certain things over there and share information. So that's the kind of idea. I'm using it as a lifeboat over there and possibly a place where I can express content that I wouldn't express here. So that's my idea. Forrest Gnome, bow hunting, I'm a master at it. I can kill a refrigerator box if you sneak it before it spooks. I hear you. Andrew, have you ever had a problem with a cap and ball pistol and made a mistake in fixing it? Yes. That is just part of it. I have broke off nipples into the cylinder before because I didn't apply proper heat. They were stuck in place And if you will heat it, simply make sure the gun is unloaded, of course. Put the cylinder on something that can get hot. Put heat directly onto the nipple with like a torch for like 20, 25 seconds tops. Get off. You don't want it glowing cherry red. You just want it hot. And that will cause it to expand. And then whenever it cools, let it fully cool to room temperature. It should break free easy. And I've made other things. I've knocked the front side off one before trying to bend it or adjust for point of aim. You're going to have mistakes here or there. The good news is you can normally get parts to replace. And if it's just, you might want to consider making a parts gun out of it and going from there. But that's, it's going to happen. If you're doing repairs, if you're doing things like that, you're eventually going to have an no matter how hard you try it. Murphy's Law is in every project. And I have screwed some stuff up before by accident. Oh, wow. CW, thank you very much for sticking in there so late. And Daniel from Australia, awesome. What do you use for knife lubricant and all your all-purpose lubricant in the field? Okay. I typically like to use, I have used in the past olive oil a lot of times for knives and stuff like that. I know that sounds strange, but historically, it was called sweet oil back in the day. And I found it works pretty good on knives and other things, and it will work on leather. Also, the lady, Lita Green, that I get her to mix me some stuff, and I've got various concoctions around here that are mixes of oils and things like that. But if I was going to recommend something to you, okay, for something to preserve steel in the field, 3-in-1 machine oil does really, really good. You can pick it up at Walmart. It's usually with the tools, not with the spray oils and automotive. If you go to the tool, where the socket sets and everything, you'll find it normally in a display of that synthetic or straight. And I just use 3M for many, many years. I use 3M oil on machine oil on all kinds of tools and stuff. It does a good job. It doesn't evaporate or dry out over time. That's the problem with WD-40. You'll hose it down and it'll evaporate. It's actually a moisture remover as opposed to a true lubricant, where the 3M is a true lubricant. And so I've lubed knives and stuff like that. Something that's going to be cutting up food or something, I prefer the olive oil, because you just, like any kitchen knife, you don't want it to rust, but at the same time, you don't want a petroleum-based oil on there. We go to cutting up the tomato and you're putting oil in your food, because it can upset your stomach and give you problems. So I hope that answers. Nikki, how old are you? 60. That's right. I am a youthful 60 years old. Do I use Mopar? Do you use wool blankets? Which is better, surplus, Hudson Bay, Penn, etc.? Okay. One of my very first videos that got any attention on my channel way back when, I think 2009, was blanket wisdom. And I show you the difference where I've got a U.S. Army blanket rolled up and it's this big. Just rolled up in a tube and it's this big. And then I show you a Whitney and it's rolled up and it's this big. And it's the same size blanket. The loft and thickness of the blanket make a difference. So I do have U.S. Army blanket that I will typically use in the summer or something like that, because they're very tough and durable. The big Whitney blankets and things like that, that's for the winter. If I've got to lay down and wrap up, one of them big Whitneys and the Pendleton-like blankets, those are the way to go, because the loft. How thick is the blanket? You can have 100% wool blanket and it's as thick as a pencil. And you can have an 80-20 and it's a ½ inch thick. That 80-20 is going to be warmer, because the loft, since blankets don't generate heat, you do. And as your heat leaves your body, think of it like air. It tries to flow between those fibers and it slows it down. So thicker, more dense fibers, slower to get, and it holds it against you longer, so you feel warmer. And in living history, we had to use just blankets. We weren't using sleeping bags or none of that stuff. And I have used 2 Whitneys make a good leaf tick on the ground, insulating it from the ground like 6 or 8 inches. And then put one blanket down, put the other blanket like this, where they're not flat over each other, like a quarter and a quarter. And I'm going to lay down on this part so that whenever I fold one over and then I fold it over again, so it's like an envelope. And then I would pick my feet up and fold it under on the feet. Just kind of lift your feet up. You'll feel it fold down, and then you lay your feet down, and it folds over that thing. And it's as good as a sleeping bag. You know, I'll stay warm in it. You learn that when you go to roll over, since the one against me on this side is going right to left, and here's like the edge of it. The one on the outside is going this way. You would lift up and roll over, and lift up and roll over. That way it didn't cling to you. And you learned you could roll over and stuff in it and be very warm. It traps as good as any sleeping bag. Jonathan Frisbee, yes, it is. Hello, good evening, Jonathan, by the way. Red Dwarf, if I want to reliably take a deer with a Catballer revolver, is the Colt Walker the best choice? The Dragoons, the Colt Walker, or the Rogers and Spencer, but you can take them with an 1860 Army as well. The power level will do it. Remember, you need to be in bow hunting range, like 25 yards or less. You've got to be able to place your shot in the important place. Okay. A Kato Ojama bullet would be preferred because it's basically a Keith type hunting bullet, and that big blunt end is going to tear a big cookie cutter hole when it goes in to suck air in, and therefore bleed him quicker, and will normally put him down, fairly well. The conical bullet like the Johnson & Dow is too pointed. It's going to make a clean hole going in and out. And so unless you hit bone, where a round ball would actually be a better choice than the Johnson & Dow, because it's going to hit and flatten out a little bit and get you a bigger opening hole and get you better performance. So having taken fairly large game with a Catballer revolver, it will do it. It'll be as effective as any other handgun hunter as long as you stay in your range and be able to place it. Now, how can I be sure to hit? Take a paper plate, regular old paper plate like you eat off of, put it on a cardboard box. Start however far apart you want to start out at, say 10 yards. Bring it up, put a kitchen timer up for 2 minutes, and put all 5 shots on that paper plate in 2 minutes. I don't care where on the paper plate, just hit the paper plate. Okay. You do that, fine. Back it up 10 yards. Back it up 10 yards. When you can get back to 25 or 30 yards and you can put them all on there in less than 2 minutes, you'll take any deer. All you got to do, because that's the size of the vitals. You want to hit him in the heart area, that's the size of the vital. And so you put your shot under pressure reliably. If you can't hit it, that's where you got to practice at. But you can hunt with them, and, well, if it's legal where you're at. In Alabama, it is legal. 40 caliber and larger, it's legal to hunt deer. So a Catballer revolver can be used. Oh, Bear Essential to Bear said, Cat Bard, hello from Illinois. Oh, yeah. Bumby, Mr. B, talking about using olive oil to heat it and quench it. Yeah, that works really good for that. Hello, salmon fishing. Catch anything? I have always wanted to go up in the Pacific Northwest and fish for big old salmon. I've seen pictures where, crystal clear and then just like a cloud of them coming through. Oh, that would be just awesome. Dan Lutz and I were going to do that, but it just never happened. Whatever happened to mineral oil? I still have some mineral oil. In fact, I don't have it here right within reach, but mineral oil mixed with tallow is one of my favorite treatments for leather. That I have a little tin of it. I keep an old cut off sock in. I'll take it out and I'll use it to treat. And it does really, really good. Hello to Solo Edge in New Zealand. How you doing? Thank you for watching. Correct. Ford tractor. That's one of the reasons our ancestors carried it. And back when I was doing living history, there was a question had come up about gun maintenance and stuff during the Revolutionary War and etc. And you'd find this reference to sweet oil, that they were using. They had reheat treated a spring because a member of the group had been a blacksmith. And so they had actually got a spring to the right temperature, and then he quenched it in sweet oil. And then later on, in another part of that, there was a statement of where they had got ducks, small young ducks, and they decided to fry them in sweet oil. Well, that told me right there it's got to be edible. And then over time, we finally nailed it down that yes, it was a type of olive oil. And so it was used as a gun treatment, it was used as cooking, it was used as whatever. And so it's just the way it now. Of course, the guys back in the day, they had whale oil. We don't anymore because we don't whale anymore. But whale oil was a large component here for lamps and everything else until kerosene took over from it. So, do I like Red Dead Redemption 2? I've seen gameplay by it, but I have not played it, actually. I played a couple of other games, but I never played Red Dead Redemption. Haven't played it. Hello, Chris in West Virginia. Cap, have you ever camped out in a van? Yes. In fact, working, we had a company van, and I would have to go to job sites sometimes. I just camp out of the van. Like the smallest U-Haul, where it's like a pickup truck up front, and then that box in the back. They have the wood slats on the side. I just swing a hammock up inside of it, and it had a connector door that went into the cab. So I could just get in there and camp once I unloaded gear. And I have camped in vans where I've made a pallet in the floor to sleep on and have my camp boxes and open up the doors and put an awning up over the top right quick and things like that. It can be a good way to travel around quick and easy. In fact, when Dan and I were talking about going to Alaska, he said how expensive it would be to go around. I said, rednecking it. And he said, what do you mean? I said, find out if they got a U-Haul, if they got one of the small U-Hauls. We'll rent the U-Haul for a week. What we're going to do with the U-Haul? Camp in the back of it, drive around. If something hits us, we call them and say, uh-oh, come get your van. Cheaper than renting a van. You can rent a U-Haul and just sling stuff in the back of it. So we thought about running around parts of Alaska, what little roads there are, and camping out of the back of one of them small U-Haul vans. Cap, no, I will not. I wanted to be at Central Ohio. In fact, I had spoken that we were going to be coming to it. However, we have a family conflict at that time, and so I've got to honor the family obligation. And but I hope to come back up there next time. And so I've talked to the guy putting it on and apologized. Said I said I was going to come back up, but I just got something I got to do down here, and it's the same time period. The world seems to revolve around spring and fall on events. And so whenever they all pop up, it's like there's 30 events in these 6 weeks. And everybody wants, something. And of course, family wants to get married, and the church is doing something, and football games, and we're having quail hunting. We're going to have a family reunion, and, it's not too cool, not too hot. Terry, good luck with your channel. Now's a good time to get into it, and I hope you things like make sure you hit me up on Facebook. I'm Blackie Thomas on Facebook, and I'll be happy to give you any pointers or ideas I can. Alpine Warrior, thank you very much. I do the best I can. I didn't start the channel for it to be this big, but I'm tickled that it's been well received. Edgar, yes, it's Thursday again already. Deworm sweet oil for earaches. I've heard about doing that, the extra fine virgin olive oil, inside the ear. Warmed oil, especially not hot, but warm, seems to work. And we used to do a thing for kids that would get water in their ears, either from showers, swimming pools, swimming, or something like that. And we would take a small, one of the toy baby bottles, which you could use an eyedropper, and we'd put rubbing alcohol into the ear to dry it out. So we'd put, just basically fill the ear full of rubbing alcohol, let them have say what, and that would drive out any water because the alcohol and water would separate. And then whenever they poured it out of the ear, their body temperature would evaporate the alcohol and be a dry ear. And so that helped. Sometimes we had to put the warm oil in for earaches and things like that. You don't have as many people with many earaches as you used to. When I was a kid, it was a common thing for small kids to have earaches. Bloody noses, earaches, stuff like that was just everywhere. Hello, John. Yeah, fixing wax is very useful for so many things. Hello, Thomas in South Carolina. Diane. What occupation did I retire from? Okay, I have had multiple jobs in my life. My first job I can point to and say was actually a working job was in a cotton mill at age 9. I have worked and worked my whole life. The first job I retired from, i.e. ain't working anymore, was when I was 38 and I was a district manager for Printco, which was out of Ohio. And I was in charge of a district. And then whenever they reallocated and, reconstituted and everything, they decided they were going to eliminate my district. So they paid me to basically retire. And so I did for over a year and a half retire, and bored to tears. I need chaos in my life. And so I went to work at Walmart after that. And I worked 17 and a half years at Walmart, really for just something to do and to be able to share with you guys and stuff like that. My passion has always been outdoor stuff. So you could say that I kind of retired from being a district manager and working at Walmart. But beyond that, that's about it. I never had one of those 9-to-5 jobs that, well, I did, but you know what I mean. 20 years of, working in a print company or something. No. But I called it retired because they paid me money and eliminated my position and I didn't have to work no more. So, hey, way it works. Jim. Oh, yeah, we're going. What's your question? Matt, hello from Oregon. You going to be an Eagle Scout? Awesome. Okay, Brad, you're talking about mixing stuff to go into the thing? Yes, that does really, really good. There's in different places in the country, I fully agree. You need waterproof boots. Absolutely. Down here in my neck of the woods, if you got a waterproof boot, your feet will be sopping wet with sweat in minutes, even in January. It's just the humidity and the heat down here. We don't get cold enough. Up in snow country, up in the slushy stuff, yeah. But I tried waterproof boots at one time and just forget it. Pulling your feet out and they're all wrinkled because the sock be just wring out sock wet. So it just depends on the person and stuff like that. But we will often treat our boots and stuff to be water repellent, like you're talking about, rather than truly waterproof, because if it don't breathe, you're going to sweat too much. Okay. Edgar, sorry to hear it was a tumor. Oh yeah, we had a family member when she was, I think, 11, and she kept having these horrible sinus infections, and they finally did an X-ray and saw something up here in her sinus, and so they do their thing. They run their little scope up there, and here was this plastic bead for when she was 5 years old. She'd shoved up her nose. And it'd been up her nose 4 years. And it finally, the body had grown to the point it was a blocking something and giving her all this stuff. And so they had to pull this bead out, But I remember that, she was 5 and she shoved the bead up her nose and then told her mama about it. And her mom said, it'll probably come out. And they forgot about it. And there she is, 11. They found out that bead was still up there. She said, I didn't have a tumor. I had a bead. They thought it was a tumor when they first saw it because it was something solid. They went in there and looked, and here was a bright green bead. So, Thomas talked about doing apple oil. I have not seen apple oil. That's a new one on me. That's very true, Garen. Parents weren't afraid to let kids be kids back in that day. We lived by doing and by, you know, taking your licks. Suck it up, Buttercup. You jumped out of your window and broke a leg. Okay, let's go to the doc. And kids were kids, but we learned, didn't we? You figured out when you ran into that and it hurt. Don't do that no more. When you grab that light socket and it lit you up, you learn not to do that. And first time your mama said, don't touch the oven when I opened the door, you figured it out, didn't you? I'm not talking about let them intentionally get really hurt, but kids learn by doing, and you start understanding that when mom and dad said, don't do that, there was a reason. But normally it took a few burned fingers and stubbed toes and dislocated shoulders to figure that out. Mr. B, is linseed oil good for sealing wooden grips? Yes, they do very, very good. Boiled linseed oil is better. Linseed oil takes way too long to dry. It'll take a week or more, maybe even a month to dry. If you're not in a hurry, one of the things I mentioned in my videos of redoing is come home, take the grip, put just a single drop on it, and take your fingertips and see how far you can smear that out. Put another single drop all over it. You do that every day, sometimes twice a day, like before I go to work, when I get home from work. And I do that every day for a month, 30 days. At the end of that month, I go to doing it once a week. And I do it once a week for 6 months. And then I finally do it once every 6 months for 2 years. And you'll build up micro little layers of it, and it'll penetrate in. And man, you can see into the wood then. It's just amazing. When I used to do gunsmithing and do refinishing. But it's so time consuming. Yeah, but after I get the first coat of the boiled linseed oil on, and that will dry overnight. And then I take superfine, what I take is an old sock a lot of times, and just something kind of rough, and buff it really good. Any tackiness will come off, then I'll look at it. And if I've had full coverage, everything's great, then I'll take really fine steel wool and just light. I don't bear down, I'll just go over just a little. That kind of breaks that top sheen off where it doesn't look so fake. And then I'll put that drop and seal in those scratches, and it makes a difference. It makes a much better, more realistic looking grip. Hey, did she keep the bead? That I don't know. Greetings from New Hampshire. Thanks for sharing your time. Hello there, Mick. Mick Jam. Stump, glad you made it. I'm gonna try, guys, to make this a Thursday night thing. Every Thursday night, this time, 7 p.m. I'll do, if I can, this, and I'll announce if I'm not gonna be able to. I'll let y'all know. But like if I'd be off, like I'm gonna go camping next week, and I say I won't be on Thursday night or some other conflict, I'll let y'all know. But we'll try to do it so that way you can remember your questions. If you see a video during the week, comment, tell me about it. I'll be glad to go back to you. But if I don't get back to you in a timely manner because I get distracted, I'm worse than a basset. I get pulled away to everywhere. Then just remind me, and when you get on here, say, hey, a couple days ago you did this, and I'll be glad to answer you as best I can. What's happening on the 24th? That's 2 days from now. Let's see. Today is Thursday. It'd be Saturdays. Don't know where you come from that. 24th is Saturday. Next Saturday is when I'm going camping. This Saturday I'm not. I'm actually meeting with a friend of mine and going to a gun show. Hello, Dutch. How you doing? Yes, I am planning on continuing it. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make the one in November. Georgia Bushcraft. If I can, it'll be a last minute thing. We shall see. Okay. I've got 2 or 3 little conflicts that if I can move them out of the way where I get the weekend free to run up there, I may do it, but we shall see. But yes, I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you hear me, that I'm thinking about taking and leaving, but taking the leaving them on my channel, but duplicating, taking those videos and putting them onto my Rumble where I can say things a little different. And I may move that over there where I'm doing my stealth series on Rumble, where I may do it to post on YouTube and then edit out the sections that YouTube don't like and then put the whole uncut thing on Rumble. We shall see. That's a thing in the future. There's a lot more I can say on that, but I can't say it that much on YouTube. You know, that's just the way it is. And no, I'm not going nuts, guys. I'm not going off thing. I've had a couple people going like, Blackie, don't go to the dark side. Stay where you're at. I'm not going. It's just there's a lot of knowledge from that, and that might become important in the near future to some people to know. So I'm just wanting to share what I've got. Diane, do you apply brown kiwi leather dye first and then apply linseed oil? I can. It depends on how the color of the wood is. A lot of the percussion revolvers and even a lot of the modern ones, the other type things, the wood is kind of blonde and just doesn't have any grain to it. And so I will either use dark brown shoe polish dye, the actual dye, which is an alcohol-based dye and will penetrate into the wood. And then lightly buff that to kind of lighten it a little bit where it doesn't look true black or too like that. I get a little grain out of it that way. I've also gone to the calligraphy sets and like Hobby Lobby and stuff like that, and they'll have brown ink. I won't say dye, but it's an ink that I've used before to do that. So just some sort of dark penetrating. I've also used really dark walnut stain that like you get at Walmart. Something to get in there and get me some depth, give me some color where it's not just flat. And you can usually look at a brand new percussion gun or a single action army or whatever, and they got these red grips or these sort of a funny, and that's a dip. They dip it in that to apply it, because once you start taking it off, it's just like a sheet of plastic comes off and it's white underneath. And so grips are going to get scratched and you're going to end up with these marks all over it. So I prefer to redo it. It just looks more realistic to me. So some sort of darkness onto it, and then lightly buff it. If I like old socks, turn where the fuzzy side of the sock is at and bear down and buff it with your hand, generate a little heat, and see if you can get it to kind of shine a little. And that way, you know, you've got any surface coating on, and look at it. Is it dark enough? Now, here's the thing a lot of people don't get out in wood. Certain woods absorb more than others, even tree to tree, year to year. And so I will quite often stain one tonight, put it over here and leave it till tomorrow. When I come in from work tomorrow, then I'll look at it, because it looks great right now, and it would actually fade as that what I'm looking at penetrates deeper as it dries, and by tomorrow it's actually too light. And if I didn't wait that time period, when I would I'd go ahead and smear it and I think seal it, it would still fade. And I've had some grits, man, I thought it was nice and dark, and man, it's great. And 3 days later I look at it and it looks like it needed another coat, but I've already sealed it. See, so don't be in such a hurry. Grips are a big statement. Hello, James. How you doing? Stump, worst living history moment. Ooh. I'll tell you the most exciting one. We were at Fort Bledsoe in Tennessee for the Southeastern Rendezvous, and we had 7 tornadoes spawn literally on top of us. There was 3,500 of us at that event camping out in pre-1840 canvas tents and things like that. And just down the mountain in the valley down there below us, which is actually like 3 or 4 miles away, they got just the town just got ripped apart by those storms. But we had mainline 150-mile-an-hour wind. It hailed so severely that it went through some tents. It just, baseball size hunks of ice started blowing through. And I had been tasked by my lovely wife to carry a friend of hers for this week-long camping trip to this living history event, because she always wanted to rendezvous, and my wife couldn't go because of work. So here I was thinking I was going, hey, I'm going by myself. I get to. No, my wife volunteered me, and so the lady's name was Lisa. She's a good friend of my wife, and so we get up there, and of course I'm surrounded by all my friends and everything else, and that storm hit. And Lisa had said before we ever got up there, the two things was she was scared of bad weather, and she didn't want to get cold. Well, her first night, she got hypothermic because it got down to 25, and she didn't have adequate blankets and stuff. Although she told me she did. I said, have you got a sleeping bag? She said, yeah. I said, is it warm enough? She said, yes. And then when I woke up about 4:30 in the morning, I'm on the other side of this tent, because she's on that side, I'm on this side, and I'm listening to her, that little kind of moan, and I figure out she's in hypothermia. So that was the first. The 2 nights later, that's when this storm front bowled in, and they came around and told everybody, you may want to leave. It looks like it's going to be really, 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 really bad tonight. You may want to leave. Well, I'm not going to walk off and leave all my gear. And so we said, no, we'd stick it out, and so did all my friends and everything. And then them tornadoes started just forming on top of us. And we had an EF3 that was less than 200 yards from me. When it went by a fork, regular old table fork, harpooned into one of the upright awning poles and sunk to the hilt. That was just debris flying out of that. I had one pole snap on mine, and wind was blowing up under it. And so I'm in this tent with Lisa sitting on my cot, and this other lady who is not doing too well in this, because her tent went down in the first 30 seconds of the storm, and she's sitting there, and I'm trying to keep the moment, laugh, and the wind would hit, and the outside of the tent would go and bell out like that, like a bellows, and whoa, and come in like that, and you're watching the walls go in and out 6 feet as the air pressure. But I would set mine up where there was no floor. The air would hit, and it would come in and keep my tent from blowing down. It pressurized my tent, thus going out. Well, and then the hail started hitting. And I told Lisa, I said, if I say now, you grab her, you go to the floor, you wrap your legs around her waist, and I'm going to turn this heavy plastic tub upside down over the 2 of y'all's head. I've got 2 more people to get, which was my sister and my good friend next door. I said, so just sit there. And then we heard the tornadoes come in, and you just, by the sound, they're right there. And I would peek out, and they're missing us, but, and I told her, I said, if I say now, grab her, go, I already have my knife out. I'm going to slash the ties, throw the door open, go down the hill to the ditch. Don't look back. Don't stop till you get to the ditch. I got 2 more people to get. And we had a total of 7 tornadoes in about a 5-hour period spawned over the top of that ridge. Not necessarily directly over us, but within, let's say, 3 or 4 miles of us. They'd spawn up there and go down that mountain. It was just a perfect place to compress the storm front to where it would do. The biggest was an EF3. And so it was a very interesting night. I'll put it that way. From beginning to end was about 5.5 to 6 hours. So it was a very interesting night. Ray Wolf, 11 Bang Bang. Yes, he's got a good channel. And Saturday night, I'm supposed to be at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I'm supposed to be on his channel with a bunch of other people talking percussion guns. Thank you, James. Peter, the Army Gore-Tex bivy. What's a comfortable temperature to use it? As about, yeah, 50 degrees would be good. It depends on how warm you are, how warm you sleep, and how much ground insulation you got. I would not have a problem using that bivy down to 35 with proper insulation underneath me and a proper sleep bag. Um, it will easily do that. So the bivy works fine, but I'd say the sweet spot would really probably be about from like 60 to 40 in that 20-degree range, because you go below that and you really got to amp up your insulation. You go above that and it really just it holds too much of your heat, and it's not that comfortable to sleep, at least not to me. Good night, John. Thanks for dropping by. Stump, yeah, Wizard of Oz Day. That thought came to me talking about the tornadoes. The epitaph, that the thing that was really really funny was after it was over, we found out that my sister, who was in the tent next door, her ridgepole snapped into 9 pieces and didn't fall down. It just got twisted. It was a 2x4 and it had snapped. And it was only when we were taking the tent down 4 days later did we actually find out that the ridge line had broken up into all these pieces, but we just kind of locked together and hadn't come down on top of her. And we got a lull in the storm, and they'd come through, and people were leaving, a lot of people down in tents and everything else. And the guy running the show, the bourgeois, had come up looking for me and Don because we had been leaders in another group that had put on these national events and wanted us to help coordinate to find out if people were hurt, stuff like that. And we did that for a couple hours between the storm lines coming over. And so finally they said, just go to the parking lot. And so me and Lisa and Michelle, my sister, went to the parking lot. And we went up to Lisa's van, and Lisa's a little shaken up by this. And so we get to the van, and of course Lisa climbs into the driver's seat. Michelle crawls into the bench seat in the middle, and I just lift up the back tailgate and lay down in the back and pull something up for a pillow and close the thing down. And within 5 minutes, Michelle's asleep and snoring. And Lisa had a little bit of a meltdown, a little Karen moment, and said, "How can you sleep at a moment like this?" And Michelle opened her eyes and said, "Well, we've got you. You'll wake us up. Other than that, we're good." And we both went back to sleep. Well, 6 or 7 months after this event, you remember what Lisa said? She was scared of getting cold and she was scared of storms. 6 or 7 months later, Lisa was back home in Huntsville, Alabama, with her husband and her 2 daughters, and I think a dog and something else. And you had a major storm front rolling over them. There was a tornado warning. They'd been told to take shelter, and they're down in the basement up on that mountain in their house, and the wind is howling and everything else. And the husband told me, he said, the daughters had started crying, the dogs are whining, and suddenly Lisa went to laughing. And the daughter said, "Mama, why are you laughing?" She said, "Hell, I did this in a tent." Hell, we're in a bunker. This is funny as hell. Hell, I did this in a tent in a cow pasture. And it got funny to her. And after that, she wasn't scared of bad storms anymore. You done been there, done that now. So, Wizard of Oz Day. True Mania, yes, I'll be happy to bring out my Kukri on my next Thursday night. I'll bring my Kukri out if you want to talk about that. And I've got 3 Kukris right now. I'll bring all 3 of them out. We'll talk about them. Choir Boy Cutlery, man, you have blowed up your channel, ain't you? Got 10,000 subscribers. Proud of you, brother. Okay, Garen, you want me to combine my Kukris into a Kukri playlist? Just put them all together? That's a very viable idea, and I might need to do that. is just go back through, bring all my Kukri videos together, and update a couple of my older videos that were poor quality camera back in that day, and just let me redo it in a more modern setting. And I'll add that to my list right now of redo and make a Kukri playlist. There. Hopefully that'll help out, because I get a lot of questions about the Kukri. I really do. Deworm, actually she did. She had a good sense of humor, and after she had been in all that storm and that cold, and she was willing to learn, and I gave her some pointers, showed her how she could avoid being cold and she could enjoy it. She started dragging her husband and her daughters camping, and she'd call me up and say, "Here, I handed the phone to my husband. Tell him how to do this." And so I had long distance teaching classes on how to camp, but hey, it worked. And John, that's very true. It's up to you. Okay, don't ever think this is the most ultimate whatever. There is no such thing. I started out with buoys, big buoys, using them for a chopping knife and things like that. Lousy design for it. I used a buoy for probably 5 years as a buoy as a camp knife to do batoning, to do splitting, to do firewood, to do shelter building, etc. And the Kukri was light years better. And once I learned how to run a Kukri, I was very, very happy. But again, your style may not need it at all. I have friends that never ever chop or cut anything like that. They took little small knives and they're happy. If you've got the skills and you've got the mindset to work with it, by God, do it. Run with it. Never think that you have to fall into somebody. A lot of the guys on a lot of the channels talking about you have to have the latest da da da. No, you don't. I rarely ever have seen something I couldn't do without. Hello, Mayhem County living. Cleveland, Georgia. I had Mike Denny was in Cleveland years ago. So I have friends up there at one point. I have family that live in, not Rome, Georgia. I'll think of it in a minute. Henry, thank you very much. I ain't got much on there yet, but I will be expanding the Rumble, like I said. Edgar, air rifles can be very, very viable, especially if you can mold your own ammunition. And I've known people that molded their own ammunition. They had a custom maker make them a little mold where they could make their own out of zinc or whatever. And they was taking the zinc lead weights that are put onto car tires and melting them down and making air gun ammo. His was a 25 caliber, I think it was, and he could shoot anything up to about 40-50 pound weight with that thing very reliably. And he was using it to take small hogs and goats and things like that. On the land he lived on, there were these small little pygmy goats that one of the hurricanes way back had tore it up, and they got wild down in that swamp. And so they weren't in the pasture. They didn't belong to anybody. They're just wild goats. But they're about, that tall and weigh maybe 20, 25 pounds. But if you shoot anything, even a 22, and they're gone. You get the one, and that was it. And he would go down there with that air gun and had basically a silencer on an air gun. And he'd be like, that's all you'd hear. And he was dropping those small goats and things like that. So, yeah, it can be a very viable thing. Lewis and Clark toted an air gun with them. Jonathan Frisbee has 6 Kukris now. Yep, you got a good collection. Stump Green, truck driver. I was too. Part of my early career was truck driving. My daddy was a trucker, so I grew up with that. So you learn to live out of a cab. My first truck was a 359, I think it was, Peterbilt. Had a little bitty old cracker box sleeper on the back of it that when you laid down in it, the top of your head was here and your feet was against the other end. And there was no insulation in that thing. And if you were in cold country, you knew it. And I learned how to run out of an old pack, out of that and out of buckets and stuff like that. And I had a Betty burner, which was just a steel coffee can with a rolled up hunk of toilet paper inside of it. You take a roll and take the cardboard out and just roll it on down tight, put it in there. And then I'd take the 98% rubbing alcohol, saturate it, okay, and have to snap on lid. And I could actually sit that up on top of my dog box or up on, not the dash, but the thing that comes out, and sit it up there and fire it up with the windows cracked about 2 inches, and could heat up chow inside the cab in a snowstorm. And I've done that back in them days several times. And you can live out of a cab. You can be amazed what you can do when you put your mind to it. What about Brad says, what about the emergency things you keep behind the seat of your truck for hurricane or flood situations? Okay. I usually have a small bug out bag of some kind in every vehicle. I like a Ranger roll set in vehicles. And I've talked about that in the past because I've got a poncho, I've got a Woobie, which is a poncho liner, and I've got a reusable space blanket. So I can pull those apart to use or use them all together as a sleeping bag or something to keep me warm, buy me some time. I usually have some sort of entrenching tool or something, rope of some kind, something to signal with to get me unstuck, get me out of the situation. Usually there's some food of some kind, usually an MRE or something in the bug out bag. And there's usually a gallon or two of potable water available. And usually there's in that set, there's a canteen cup, cook set and everything. And that I can take care of myself, take care of somebody else for the 72 hours or less it's going to take me to get home or get out of here. So that's usually the thing. The good news is hurricanes don't show up unannounced. Bad news is tornadoes can. And so down here in my neck of the woods, a hurricane can devastate a whole region. And nobody's coming to your aid for the next week because all the power lines are down, everything's tore up. When Cat 5 Hurricane Michael hit down south of me, I was to the left of it. And I had Cat 3 wind effect here. Okay. To the right, which is the bad stuff, that's where it's coming on shore and it hooks around going back. When you go down here to Dothan, Alabama, and which is about 30 miles from me, and you turn south, hitting to the Gulf, and you're about, I'd say 60 or 70 miles from the Gulf, something like that. All the trees are leaning at about that angle. And that was the wind sucking back to the Gulf where it'd come around and gone back, and it just obliterated Mexico Beach and things like that, just gone. They wouldn't even be, there'd be pipes sticking up out of the sand. There wasn't even a foundation left in places where that Cat 5 went across there and just hosed it up, tore it up, and blew it to pieces. And so down here, we have to be prepared that if a storm like that's coming, you need the stuff at the house, etc. And if you got to bug out and get out of here, when I was a boy, my grandmother said that Cat 1 is for fun. Cat 2 is going to blow a lot of wind. Cat 3, wait and see. Cat 4, bar the door. Cat 5, run for your life. There was no stay. If it was a Cat 5, leave. There ain't going to be nothing left. And there's really ain't a Cat 6, because at Cat 5, there ain't no building that ain't destroyed unless it's subterranean. It's all just tore to pieces. Garen, a large caliber PCC is better for survival than a black powder gun. Well, that's a personal choice and possible. Okay. You can manufacture black powder from what you find out in nature once you know what you're looking for. It can be done. But the PCC, compressed air guns and things, they are fantastic. Hard to repair if they ever go down. So that's the give and take. Yes, as long as everything's running good, yeah, they're superior because you're not expending caps and propellant. The disadvantage is they are a one of, so to speak. Once it goes bad, it's going to be very difficult to repair it because the average person, the average tool shop, doesn't have anything in that precise range to deal with such precise fitting parts. A machine shop that does precision race engines might, but everybody else, standard gunsmith ain't gonna be able to help you. So it's one of those things. You just got to plan all the way through it. Think all the way through it. Andrew asked, "What was it that got you started in YouTube?" Dave Canterbury. I had met Dave Canterbury in living history, just a chance meeting. Back about 93, 94, something like that. And then back in about 2008 or something like that, I happened to be just surfing this new thing of YouTube, and I stumbled upon a video of a guy talking about archery, and it was Dave Canterbury. And I recognized, hey, I remember this dude. And I started following his channel. And then when he started doing the bushcraft type stuff, he would issue challenges for doing things, and to respond to the challenge to be able to possibly qualify for the prize, you had to do a video to show you did it. And so the first one was you had to build a shelter, a Bree hut or some other shelter. And so I took a K-bar knife because you had to pick it ahead of time before you knew what you were going to do with it. And I took a K-bar knife and I built a shelter with it. And that was my very, very first video, was me building a shelter. And it was because of Dave Canterbury. And I didn't think anything about it. And then, I don't know, a week or something later, I got on and a thing popped up and somebody had commented on my video and asked a question. And so I answered them, and then that started the ball rolling. And I went to, you'd ask a question. It was just easier for me to do a video than it was to type for 2 hours to explain it. And so I started answering people's questions, and that's how it grew. In fact, I didn't think about monetizing it or anything until 2018, 9 years later, because I was just answering your questions. People would ask me, and I'd be happy to show them and tell them what I knew. The CRKT Tomahawk, fairly decent stuff, yes. Stump Grim, a bush lower and a folding saw. Good choice. I would have no problem with that. John, saw your videos 5 years ago and been enjoying them ever since. Wish I could have got them from the get-go. Hopefully one day it'll work out that way. I've had people in internet world have offered to come in and take my entire channel and reorganize it for me, but I'm suspicious of such things. Not that I distrust people. I think their heart's in the right place, but I'm kind of suspicious anytime somebody starts working with stuff, so we'll see. Peter, I have not done foil packet cooking. I did something like that, not in the cooking series, but something a long time back. But me and Bear's got that planned. As soon as it cools off, that's what we're waiting on, guys. We've got a bunch of cast iron we just picked up. And so we're going to do a cast iron thing where we're going to clean it up and etc. and show how we season it. And then we're going to be cooking on fire on his channel and on mine. We'll probably post the joint. And we're going to do full cooking and stuff like that. Show a lot of the easy, quick meals like that. That's just an old Boy Scout staple, and it works so well and so quick. to throw everything into aluminum foil, fold it up, and lay it on the coals and cook it. Flip it a couple times and have a nice hot food. Tear it open. There's your plate. Eat it out of it. Just super simple way to do it. But yes, we will be doing that. Dances with Empties. Hello there. Are you ready for hunting season? I am this year. I recently reloaded quite a bit of ammunition for my hunting rifle that I'm going to be using. And me and Bear have been talking because he's got a large hunk of, I think they took over 24 deer off of his land last year. And so we're talking about going in there this year and doing some hunting. And I hope to be able to post that video. We shall see. It's what YouTube policies and all are. Again, I may have to post the edited version on YouTube and then tell you go to Rumble and I'll show you the unedited version. We shall see. My good friend Trinity had asked me to show how to clean a deer or something I did back in the day where we didn't gut the deer. And there's a way that I cleaned it to get all the major meat sources off of the deer and not have to go into the guts of it. Because we got both bottom hams, both top hams, both all the back strap, all the rump, the neck meat. That was it. And the only thing you missed was the internal heart, liver, kidneys, and the inner tenderloin. That was the only thing you were sacrificing. And the whitetails down here in my neck of the woods ain't got no rib meat, ain't got no belly meat. They're a little bitty deer that's 100 and something pounds usually, and they're just as stringy and tough as rawhide, except for those big muscle groups. And so either we're going to fully process this sucker. And when I say fully, I mean we're fully processing it. There ain't going to be nothing left when I get done. On the other end, if we're just gathering the meat quickly, I would go in and I would clean and get those major groups, the hams, the rumps, the back strap, the front shoulders, the neck meat, and all of that, and just leave the guts, never have to gut it, and go with that. And but it was fully processed. And I mean, we're going to fully process. We're going to take the guts out and clean them out. We're going to take a water hose. We're going to split them open, make rawhide out of that. You know, the toes are going to be made into stuff. Fully function. You know, when me and my wife first got together, we had a deer that I got, and I strung it up in the front yard, and she wanted to fully process one. I said, okay. And 2 days later, we were still processing. Where I'd cracked bones to get marrow out. I had cut bones and ground them and made them into things. I mean, just, there wasn't nothing left when I got done. You know, everything's got a job if you start looking at it. We even use the teeth. I've seen the teeth set into wooden things to use as scrapers and stuff like that before. So, Edgar, thoughts on hot water balls in your sleeping bag? Work really well. That's one of the reasons I like the Nalgene clear plastic canteen, because it can handle boiling water. It says it's dishwasher safe, which means up to boiling water. And so I could heat water in the cup and pour into it and get it hot. Not necessarily truly boiling, but you get my point. Get super hot water, screw it on, and take my damp socks off that I wore today. Okay. Put them over the bottle and then curl up with that in your sleeping bag at night. Well, A, the hot water is going to warm. 2, they're drying your socks. And it keeps your socks warm and handy. So in the morning, whenever I'm changing back, I've got warm socks. And the socks I'm wearing now, which are my sleeping shirt, underwear socks, which are bone dry, those come off and those stay in my thing, so that whenever I'm out doing my stuff, that stuff isn't getting damp, so that I will stay warm. But yeah, it's a very effective way. I put one against my kidneys or the inside of my thighs many times, stay warm on a cold night. Brad, about a catch pole and stuff, I actually like an ironwood walking stick, a staff that's about 5 foot tall, and it's about that big around, and it's ironwood, and I can use it for defense if I need to. It just looked like an old stick laying in the bed of the truck, piece of firewood. Yeah, I can rear back and flatten a fender with that thing. It's worse than a baseball bat. So, oh yeah, Steve, 90s. Yeah, we got the warm air. Remember that cold snap that rolled over? Well, now it's gone to the far side. And what's happening, if you looked at the world, you're seeing the polar vortex goes to that side. Well, it's pulling the moisture up this way. And then, so probably first of next week, I'm betting, mid next week, it should rotate back around. Our temperature should drop again as it pulls up the moisture on that side and pulls the cool down on that side. And it's going around the planet, just dancing like a ballerina with a big old skirt. So, yeah, it's hot today. Yeah, kids on bikes. It wasn't serious till a bone was poking out. Very true. Dutch, what are your thoughts on day glow colors? Should you involve in your kits? I tell you, one of the best things I ever saw Dave Canterbury say as part of a kit, which I agree with, is like the day glow t-shirts. Get one way too big to fit. I want to be able to go over all my clothes. Okay, fold that up and put it in the bottom of your pack. If it's an emergency, you can take it off and put it on, put it over whatever you're wearing, and see you way out yonder. So if I need to be found, I'm glowing. I can be seen. But at the same time, if I don't need it, it's in the pack. And so a lot of times you can pick up, even at Walmart, those day glow yellow or day glow orange t-shirts. And since, let's say I wear a large, get a 3X, because I'm wearing it as an overcover at that point. And so day glow would be very, especially you guys that are out west or you RVing and stuff, or four-wheel driving, you're planning on going way back yonder in them places where there ain't no roads and there ain't nobody coming. Yeah, that kind of stuff would be a big help, especially when you're trying to signal aircraft or whatever to get help. At day glow, there's a reason for it. And in that, I think would be a good idea. 40 in interior Alaska today. Oh, how I wish. Do your deer have the wasting disease? At this time, the Alabama deer herd does not have it. We are very diligent about it, and they have told all the hunters, if you see anything that gives you that idea, they've established drop places where you can just simply take the head and drop it off and let the state test it, because they're trying to address it. But we have not seen it down here. Yeah. Garen, deer feet make good knife handles. I have seen a lot of those, especially the smaller deer. Make a small fawn handle, which is not a fawn. It's actually just a small deer's foot, but would be the handle. And you saw a lot of that in Germany and Austria and stuff like that back in the day. They had those type of small deer leg handles. And it came over in America because of the Germans that came over in mass. And so I've seen quite a few of those when I was a boy, of family members who were married from people from Germany, or people who had spent time in Europe in World War One or World War Two that came back with those little B knives. So, yeah. Is mink oil good to treat a World War II poncho? I would say no. Depending on who made the poncho, if it's a canvas, I would suggest looking at look at Panther If it's a canvas type poncho, go look at Panther Primitives, because they have treatment for their canvas tints, and use that to treat the poncho. To be honest with you, a lot of those old World War II and etc. surplus ponchos that were canvas were treated with paraffin and gasoline. That we wouldn't do that today, you know. but they were back in those days. And so if it's a plastic or rubber or something like that, spray silicone. Go look in the sporting goods section of like Walmart or something. It normally has a bright orange lid on it, and you spray silicone. It usually it doesn't affect fabrics and things, but if it's a nylon-y, a plasticky type material, and it's kind of hard to tell what it really is, test a corner or something like that. But it will usually help and make a water repellent that works fairly well. I've used it to just spray on field jackets and things where it bead water and run water right off it before. John, have you ever tried fly fishing for catfish? I have, actually. Blue cats, the type of catfish down here, go for live bait. And so I had a lure that looked like a small bluegill that had the shimmer of it, and I would quickly, and I want him to think it was about that big, like a 2-inch bluegill, young bluegill running by, and stuff like that. It is quite challenging when you get a 6-8 pound or bigger cat. I think the state record's 300 pounds for a big cat. But it's a truly a fight, and a catfish will give you the biggest battle, no doubt. Short of a tarpon or short of an alligator gar, they give the most fight. And so I have done it, but really brim and bass is my bread and butter. When I take my fly rod out and play, I'm more after them than I am after cats. It can be done, but cats usually come to stink, and they're smell bait hunters usually, and they're kind of slow to go after something. The blues will. They actually prefer live bait, and so they'll try to track it. But channel cats, yellow cats, mud cats, it'll buzz right by their nose and they'll just ignore it. And so it's more of a location type thing. Okay, John, I answered that one. Let's see. I'm catching up, guys. Bear with me. Gray Wolf, yes, I was asked about doing shot loads in a 50 cal. Could it be done? And I used a tampon to make a shot cup and do that. It just depends who made the tampon. The one I had, I remember I had to cut a little bit to fit better in my 50 caliber, but I remember before that, years ago, there was a smaller, cheaper version that we would actually just split the applicator all the way to the bottom where you had the little ramrod plunger. Take the outer casing, wad it up tight, put it inside of it to plug that bottom hole, and then you'd put the shot in and cut it off, and then put a wad. So we'd take the tampon and cut it into a 2/3, 1/3. We'd put pour the powder down the barrel, put the 2/3 wad down, ram it, put the pedal cup in, ram it down, and put that 1/3 on top to hold it in place, and shoot shot out of a 50 caliber rifle or 54 caliber rifle. And at close range, it could be used for birds and squirrels and stuff like that. It's a lot of work, but yes, it could be done. I did that video doing it to answer a question because, as I recall, I was on the Pathfinder R&D site, and somebody asked, could it be done? And I said yes. And somebody wanted me to prove it, do a video. So I did a video and proved it could be done. So that's one of only, I think, 2 videos on my channel that shows my 50 caliber flintlock. Good evening, CK America. Edgar, what are some old-time uses for gasoline like that? Take a metal can, fill it full of clear beach sand, and then pour about a canteen cup worth of gasoline all the way around the top of the sand and let it sit there for 20-25 minutes, and then put something lit on the end of a 3 or 4 foot thing and put it out there, because it's either going to light or go poof. Usually it just depends on the temperature. It'll light. And as the gas heats up the sand, the fumes come up, and you'll have flames dancing up around it. And it was an old type of cooker they used in the 40s and 50s, where they would just tote a coffee can, sand, and siphon gasoline out of the tank of the car. And then they'd put 2 tent stakes across to give a space and put a pot up there and cook on it. So I don't recommend using a lot of stuff with gasoline because how volatile it can be. And the fact that if you're a real hot day, you're extremely volatile. If it's a cold day, it's not so much. Again, it's the fumes that ignite, so you got to be real careful. Pantera, I'm doing good. Sturgeon, I honestly can say I've probably actually hooked 2 or 3 sturgeon, and that was in the Alabama River, which is a big major waterway. And it was like hooking on. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought it was a shark. I mean, we have something down here in my waters called an alligator gar. Look that up. It's very similar in power to the sturgeon. So, you're not fishing for it. I was fishing for catfish, and I hooked that sturgeon. And I was really sweating it whether my rod was going to take it. I mean, I had my feet buried into the bow of that boat. I'm putting everything in it, and it just didn't seem to matter. The boat wouldn't move fast enough for him pulling. And finally, the hook finally gave up the ghost. The hook snapped, is what finally let him get off of me. But yeah, they put up a fight. He's not a fast runner. He's just like a bull. He just starts pulling and he don't turn around. Hey, Justin, glad you made it. Hello, let's all play. How you doing? The Woods Runner School of Self-Reliance. Hello, sir. Thanks for dropping in. I am, and I hope you're doing well as well. Yeah, dogs. Back in the old days of 3-dog night, 2-dog night. There was a reason. That's one of the reasons. The medieval ice age, the small dogs. Like the little bitty dogs. That's where that comes from. People bred dogs to be small companion warmers to hold in your arms because their body heat is higher than than a human body heat, and so they generated warmth. And you put them in the bed. I can clearly remember I had family members that had dogs that were fuzzy dogs that went on only on cold nights were they allowed to get in there and get along the bottom of the bed to warm your feet, and stuff like that. All right, Edgar, dapping. No, I don't call it that. If you're talking about just taking a pole and a line and a hook, we call that cane pole fishing down here. Yeah, extensively. That's, in fact, my preferred way in many places to go fish is just sneak in there with that little bitty cane pole and just flip and roll cast. It's similar to how you do a fly rod. And an old trick we would do was we would take a hook with a pretty good size eye in it, and we would bend the hook. So here's the eye, here's the shaft. We would bend the hook around so that on the end of the pole, we would drive that hook down onto it, leaving the eye on the end. Okay. Then we would whip it, and that put an eye on the end of the pole. We would then say, let's say that the line for this pole should be 10 feet. Okay. We would then put like 16 or 18 feet on it, tie one end of the base of the pole, run it through that eye, and you would take a finger and hook it and pull it down short so you could cast kind of like a fly rod. in these tight creeks and stuff like that. So I could run it down to where it's only 3 foot of line. I could reach out and slide it straight into that hole in those lily pads and things like that, or I could flip it, whatever. So a short line was better. I just pulled it, made my line short and flip. At the same time, if I had room to cast, I could sidearm it and let out line like you do with a fly rod, and almost double the length of my line, so I could flip way over on the other side and catch. When you hooked fish, then you went to pulling the excess line until you brought it backwards short, and you could pick him up and swing him straight to you. I don't see anybody do that anymore. You know, I guess I need to do a video on that. But that was an old way that we called it, cane pole fishing. But that I've heard of other ways of doing it. But that was my preferred way growing up. That's what it was. Us boys did. You couldn't afford no fancy reels and things. You had a cane pole, a can of worms, and a hook and a line, and a couple of corks, and that was it. Any suggestions for cleaning a carbon steel knife? Found an old skinning knife that is rather stained and nothing really has been working to clean it. Okay, if it is, the stain is actually in the metal. What's happening is you've got black oxide in the pores of the metal itself. Then you're probably going to need, you could stand it up in vinegar. And vinegar is a mild acid type, and it will lightly remove that. Light staining it will remove. Barring that, there are just some steels that the fibers in the steel seem to just wick it down in. It's actually in the steel instead of on the top. Flits, I know Pam is yelling at the camera. Flits, Blackie. Flits will polish pretty good. Go look in automotives for aluminum polish for rims and things for cars, and that might help you get it, because I know some people are collectors or whatever, and you want it to look new, not in any way stained or whatever. And so those type of things will help a lot to take that patina away and make it look more new. But I would start with vinegar. Just stand it up in vinegar for a little bit and take it out and like light steel wool and see if that'll take it off there. If that don't work, then I would go to that aluminum. If that don't work, you just got one that's got a stain in it. You just got to figure a way to get it out. I have actually seen somebody take a laser that would normally be used for etching, but there were these fingerprints on this sword blade where the individual had got cut and had gripped the blade at not TWA, the Renaissance type things, and left fingerprints in the steel. And he tried to get it out, but the blood had actually put a fingerprint in it. And so he took it to some jeweler, and they took their laser and just like whitewashed the whole blade and made it shine like brand new money, burned off that top thousandth of whatever layer, and fixed it that way. So I hope that answers your question. Justin fought a gar on it. Oh yeah, you know what I mean. Them, and when you've got a gar on a trot line, one, you've got a line with hooks everywhere. Two, he's got teeth just everywhere. And and he's rolling, and he's a barracuda. He turns on the thing. You're scared you're gonna get a hold of that rope and he's gonna burn through and bury a hook into your hand. Or you're gonna get a hold of it and you're gonna end up with teeth that's gonna rip your fingers up. We had a small one time get on a trot line, and I just grabbed a hold of the trot line and pulled it to the bank. Pulled him and the trot line, everything right up on the bank. I didn't want to mess with him in the water. Get him up on the bank, club him, and then ply them jaws up and get the hook out of him and everything, clean him up. But no. Deworm, yeah, kerosene, turpentine. I've seen turpentine used for that too, because you got poison ivy or something. Shadow 7, yes. If you're going to be around gators, carry a a tomahawk's great, man. Because you're pulling that line up on that trot line and everything's, and suddenly this head pops up, you know. And my recommendation, cut the line. Have a knife. Quite often, right here on the side of the boat, I had this hook that would be just about impossible for you to get to, but I could thread a line into and cut it like a safety cutter. And for just that if I pull and a gator surface, I just cut the line, let him go. You ain't got to worry about the hook. It'll decompose in a couple of days and he'll be fine. But at the same time, I've had them lift just straight up, and you break that surface, and here it is, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're in a boat in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly you got a 13 or 14 foot gator looking at you, and he's just not concerned. He's got a full belly. He's happy. You know, I had one that we pulled up, and I had 7 lines in that one, where he had just went down my trot line swallowing fish. And that's what really stopped him, is this one's tight, you know. And so I just went along and clipped all the line, pulled my knife out, and he just floated there looking at me like, okay. And I went to cutting lines, and I cut the last line and took the oar and went, go away. And he just went over the side and didn't ever splash, didn't nothing. But, oh, it'll wake you up 2 o'clock in the morning. Trust me. Andrew, do I plan on 36 Navy videos? Yes. Now that it's cooling off, I've actually been going to the shooting range and doing stuff. And I plan on doing Spiller and Burr, my Stormborn, my 36. Yeah, I'm going to be doing more. In fact, I was talking to Bear about that day. He loves the 36. Yeah, Edgar, body heat of dogs around 130. Cats are well over 100 as well. So, yeah. My wife loves a cat curled up to her feet at night. They don't get on me because I flip too much, too many body aches. But they'll go get on my wife's butt, or they'll get on her feet, and she just loves it. So, let's play. Glad to help. Ted, we used to go fishing. Well, yeah, we did. We skipped school and we'd go fish. You know, and then show back up at the bus stop acting like, oh, we had done nothing. Yeah, we'd go down there, cook the fish on the little bitty thing. That's our lunch and stuff like that. And then hide our fishing poles and stuff at the hollow oak tree and be back up there at the bus thing to walk home like we'd been to school. We thought we were getting away with it. Yeah. What's a Jack's Cup? Are you talking about the reference that I'm mentally coming up with? Was there's a practical joke, and it was a cup that had a hole drilled in it, and so if I drank it, I put the hole to the top. So when I sit it down, but I'm drinking out of it left-handed. A right-handed person would grab it, and when they'd tip it, it'd pour out. It's like a dribble and get them. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I seem to recall something called a Jack's Cup. That was a practical joke. It's just the only thing bringing to mind. I'm sorry. Are the gars anything like pikes and muskies? Yeah. Southern cousins, but they're normally got a longer snout. An alligator gar can be 300 pounds, and he's got a snout kind of like a muskie and things like that. And, you know, that's something that when I went up to spend a week with Dan Lutz, and we went out to the woods to do by the creek to do a video, and there's this 4-foot muskie in this crystal clear water. That water ain't 2 foot deep. And there was a big, huge, fat carp, you know, about this big, and the water had like a sandbar. So if you went into the left channel, you could go upstream, but if you went in the right channel, it ran up here and it dead ended in a V, you know. And so we watched that big muskie circle back behind those carp, and like a wolf, he would slowly ease up and kind of herd them. and they'd herd, and then some of them would go to the left, and usually as one would go to the right, and then it was like lightning. He would take off chasing them, running up into that where they're going to run out of water, you know, and you'd have this explosion of fish and guts, and he'd hit and tear it apart, and then the rest of them would come back downstream, and he'd drift back down, and like 30 minutes later, he'd go to herding them back up. We watched that thing eat like 4 carp. He was 4 feet long, about that big around, and I asked Dan, I said, why don't y'all eat? So I don't know anybody eats muskie. I remember reading, you know, Sports Afield and stuff as a kid, and talk about muskie fishing and how the scales are like razor blades. You can't handle them and all that stuff. And he's, oh, I don't know anybody up here that eats them. I said, let's make a spear. He didn't want to do that. I said, look, I'll Rambo off the bank. We'll get this sucker. It'll make a great video. It's only 2 feet of water. You know, make me a good sharp spear. I mean, he's right there. You know, I will wait till he herds up in there in that shallow, and I'll come in behind him with that spear sideways and just drive him up in the shallow where he can't. We'll get him. Dan didn't want to do that. So missed on a good video. Jacob, fairly soon right now. In fact, he and I met today and discussed that in depth. He was already gathered several pieces of gear. He's ordered a camera. We're waiting for the camera to get here, and so he can do his own videos. And that won't be long. I've already told him, look, we can take mine and just shoot and then post on yours. And so this Sunday, me and him should be getting together, and we will probably be shooting his introductory video for his channel. Like I said, we're going to take the old ways videos and leave them on mine, but we'll repost them on his as well, because we're together. And then that'll be like the seed to get everything going over there. So it shouldn't be that long. Andrew, no, I do not. I haven't been to the Styx River shooting range. Yeah, Shadow 7. Talking about big gators. Gators like to lay along the edge. If there's a natural ford, a lot of times they'll get up there and just lay with their nose almost touching the surface right there. And they're hoping a deer, coon, something, whatever's going to cross will be right there in front of them because they can lunge and grab that. Okay. But because of that, they like water that's deep enough they can lay and have their nose right there. Well, there was a group from the military base over here, and they were floating the river just in inner tubes floating. And the young lady was floating, and she had her butt, you know, and she's sitting there with her phone, and she's spiraling along, and her butt high centered on the back of a 16-foot alligator. And the gator and blew out from under her, and of course she went flying, and she was kind of riding an alligator for about 30 seconds where it surfaced, and she's literally on its back with her butt on her back in this tube, and the gator just takes off in that shallow water, and she's bucking along. Finally she fell off, and then it went deep and took off, and then she found out there were alligators in this water, and the 8 or other people that were there with her said, just get back in the water, 5 more miles we take out. No, she said to heck with that. She went up over the fence and went into the guy's farm, and I know that guy, Mr. Emmett. He's 80-something years old, and he was in the barn working on an old Ford farm truck of his. And man's got a heart of gold, one of the greatest guys. But he's one of them guys. He's that big around. He's old. He's feeble, 80-something years old, and he was trying to pull the alternator. He'd got the alternator unhooked, but he couldn't physically pick this 50-pound, 1958 alternator out of that old Ford farm flatbed, and he just couldn't do it. And he said, I laid the wrench down and I said, Lord, you're just going to have to send me some help. I can't do it. And at that moment, the blonde in the bikini walked to the other end of the barn and said, hi, I need a ride back to Fort Rucker. And he said, yes, ma'am. Can you pull that out? Turns out she's an aircraft mechanic. So she pulled out that starter. They climb into his old 1960 something Chevy pickup truck. He pulls up to the gate. You know, of course, he ain't got authorization to go into the gate. He pulls up and looks at the security guard and says, hi, I'm an old guy with a hot blonde in a bikini. Let us in. Oh, yeah. He's something else. Chris, Blackie, what's your thoughts on using my Navy sea bag for my hunting trip to pack a hog into? Put a liner in it. Okay. A, is it winter? If it's winter and it's going to be cold enough and the meat's going to have a chance without spoiling, yes, you can put it into a sea bag or something like that and secure it as long as it's going to be cool enough, then get it back up there. I would recommend one of the big ice chests above that, to be honest. I have put, like in the big lawn and leaf bags, triple bag a whole deer, and then just pour ice into the bag and fill it up and leave it in the back of the pickup truck, because the high for the day was going to be 45. And as long as I iced it down in that bag in the back of the pickup truck, I could drive 4 or 5 hours home or whatever. So it's possible, but it's going to depend on the weather, guy. If it's anything warmer than that, I just get an ice chest and ice it down. You'll be better. Gray Wolf, yeah, a lot of people don't like carp, the taste of it. It can actually be cooked and be edible, but it's one of those things that is a skill to make it have any kind of real good taste. It depends on what they're eating and how it is. My granddad would not eat carp. He called it a bait fish. Marcus, what do I think of the K-Tac Kukri? That's one with a little more bent blade. Looks a lot like there's a style of kukri called surrepti, which would take, we would say in English, machete. I think it would be a good design, especially if you're going to be in cover where you're dealing with small diameter stuff, a lot of light stuff like grasses, vines, just clearing trails, small stuff to make shelters. It would probably do very, very well for that. I don't know how thick it is. And that's the thing. When you start talking kukri design, if it's thick, it's better for splitting wood. If it's thin, it has a problem. It'll sink in there, but then it won't get stuck. So I believe I know exactly what you're talking about. I think of it like a surrepti. I think of it like a machete, and it would probably be a very good companion as long as you're not going to be doing the big heavy stuff like trying to split 8-inch logs with it. You'll probably be fine. Edgar, I like Minnesota. Cool people, need mountains though. Yeah, that's. I thought all the northern states were mountains when I was a kid. It just in my mind everything, from Tennessee up was mountains. And so when I got out in Minnesota and found out they had the big old flat areas, high plains and stuff, just like blew my mind when I was started growing. Hello, Chris. You already in Florida? B, I'll have to join you and Bear with my bear haversack. Sure, come on. Good night, Andrew. Have a good sleep. Garen Bowfin. I've heard the name. Not familiar with it, but I've heard the name. Oh, Chris is in Pensacola. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. when you go back and look in history, in the Revolutionary Wartime period, they considered bass and brim and catfish as trash food and was unfit for human consumption, and they didn't eat them. This snobbery comes from Europe, where the trout was the fish, and so many of the early fishermen and fishwomen that came over here, they were only interested in trout and bass, brim. Nah, they didn't want them. Well, even lobster was considered trash food. And in fact, there was a rebellion in New York City in like 1753, 1754, a big uprising revolt where servants were being forced to eat lobster 3 times a week and rebelled against it because it was not decent food. Today you pay a premium for it, but back then it was considered trash. So, go through time and you look, you'd be amazed at what people call trash food today as a delicacy. Yeah, Justin, a lot of people think of only Texas as desert, but there's a lot of hill country and everything else there too. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like Shadow 7, kind of like the famous walking catfish and stuff. They can live outside the water quite a while. Catfish can actually live out of the water for quite a while, an hour or two sometimes, depending on the cat. I have seen some throw it up on the bank that you think, okay, that's it, it'll be dead in 10 minutes. And you go back to fishing, and a half hour later, he's flopping down, going back in the river. So, got to keep an eye on him. Hello, Bear. How you doing tonight? And hello, Maddie and Adam as well. Edgar, yeah, they will. I was part of my jobs years ago was working with people from other countries. They were coming in the country for the military contractor I worked for. That we did weather radars and military radar, and they'd come in to learn how to work on their stuff. So you didn't have to send one of us all the way to Japan or all the way to China or whatever or Shanghai or Hong Kong or whatever to swap out a bulb in a panel. And so they'd spend time. And this one individual, I want to say they were from China. They may have been Hong Kong, but they were saying that we were eating lunch and I had not finished my meal. And he looked over at my plate and he said, "You're not going to finish that?" I went, "No, I'm full." He said, "There are people starving in Mississippi." Which when I was a kid, the joke was, you eat your food, there are people starving in China. So we all had a good laugh. And he said, we have a joke back home that says that God created a new animal, brand new animal. And that the Russians said, "Can we make it pull a plow?" The British said, "Oh, it is such a hideous beast. How do we hide this animal?" The Americans said, "How do we defend the rights of this poor animal?" The Chinese said, "Does it go good in Worcestershire sauce? Can I cook this sucker?" They're all about the food, baby. Yes, Jacob, there will be more on the Bear Budget Camper. In fact, I have planning on, in the 1st of October, I'm going to be painting the roof of that thing because it needs another coat of paint on it. And I plan on doing some camping. It just got too hot to use it. Down here in my south, once past May, it just gets so hot that even inside of that on a cot at 11 o'clock at night, it's 95 degrees because it's just so hot and humid. And so I will be doing stuff this winter with it. More on the setting it up. I've talked about raising the top up maybe 3 or 4 inches to give me a little bit more space. I've talked about working my cot in there a little bit different, making boxes and things and way systems to put stuff in various parts of the truck to do different jobs. And I plan on doing that. I got started in the springtime and etc. And then it just got too hot to do anything with it. But I will be doing more stuff with that. Abigail, hello. Sellers, hello from Hunter and Abigail. Yeah. Well, Justin, you've got the heat right now, like I talked about earlier. If you'll simply look at the polar vortex, which most of my life was stable right up on top, and it was that super cold air, and it just spun around quite happily over Alaska, northern Siberia, and Canada, Greenland, etc. Well, now it's kind of offset. Now, remember, was it this year or last year where it dipped all the way down? And it was sitting in Texas for a couple of weeks, and Texas was just Arctic conditions. Texas was freezing, and then at the same time that was happening in Texas, Siberia had record heat where it sucked heat up all the way into Siberia. So you look at it like it's sliding on the top. And so right now we get the heat because the cold is now over Europe, Asia, China. When it rotates back around, we'll get the cool probably into next week. So, yeah, Germany says they have all the right papers. Edgar, pemmican actually is not modern pemmican, but actually it was more than that. It was mostly the fat. The diet of most of the people that were eating wild game and things, you didn't have a lot of fat. And in fact, when you read the accounts of the mountain men, and they talked about, fat cow, poor bull, which meant shoot the does. She's got a little body fat on her. That buck does not, because he's all the time trumpeting and showing off and defending his herd and stuff like that. And he'd just be bone lean meat. You couldn't even fry it, it would burn. So they craved grease. And so pemmican being made with tallow and fat and stuff like that that's one of the reasons the Eskimos eat blubber and lard and fat, because in that extreme cold environment, that's the only thing that's going to give you the calories. I had a good friend of mine that he taught Arctic Survival School for the Marine Corps for a while. Grouch, and he talked about how you'd get the guys in, and these are very fit young men in the Marine Corps, and they would feed them eggs and steak every morning. They would feed them these high, heavy meals, and said they'd be out there for 4 to 6 weeks, and by the end of it, their hair was falling out. They're eating 2 and 3 steaks at breakfast, and they're losing weight because in such cold conditions, their bodies having just burned continuously. And the only thing you could eat is some sort of fat to generate that. And so they said I'd have guys that would be just sitting there taking spoonfuls of lard and eating the lard, and said it tastes like ice cream to them because you needed that kind of concentrated stuff. So anything that was dense. That's one of the reasons the Eskimos ate blubber. It was a way to stay warm. You'd think, oh my God, that'd be horrible. Well, but at that place at that time, Gray Wolf, can you talk about rabid fever and how to identify and avoid it? I'm aware of it. I am not an expert on it, and I would not like to talk about that this time because I don't want to give you misinformation. Just be straight up. Rabbit fever is a thing that affects small game, usually rabbits. It can transmit into other animals. A good friend of mine's son nearly died. He was cleaning a deer, and the deer had rabbit fever. Rabbit, not rabid, rabbit, like bunny rabbit fever. And his allergic reaction to him, he nearly died because he nicked his hand in cleaning the deer and got the deer blood on him, and it was just reaction. So I need to do more research on that. It is something that's not as prevalent in the South as it used to be. But I need to do some more research and do a video for you guys on that. So that will go on the list. Rabbit fever. Thank you for the suggestion. Marcus Eben, hello. Yeah, Justin, well, that's just it. With the coming, there's a high pressure cell sitting over Texas. Between Texas and the East Coast, where I'm at, they're talking about that trough. Cool air is going to drip down. The question is next Wednesday, how big is that trough? How far down? If that cold front's all the way down to me, then this hurricane they're talking about is going to be sitting in the middle of the Gulf. Ain't got a chance. It's not going to push against that. So that would steer it into Florida. It's not going to steer into Texas because of that high pressure. But you're going to be sitting there. But they're saying next Wednesday that high pressure will be moving inland, like heading toward New Mexico and stuff like that. So you're probably, depending on where you're at around Waco or whatever, how long it is for this cool spreads out and you get it. But it's drawing the heat up there and it's going to dip down on this side of you. Hopefully you'll get some cool air fairly quickly. Ray Wolf, eating beaver tail. True. Fat. That's what they real fatty, greasy meat. One of the reasons they love coons, fatty, greasy meat. We would take a one raccoon, fat raccoon, and we would butcher. And if it was really heavily fat, we'd put it in the freezer. And then whenever you killed a deer and the deer was real lean and you were going to process that whole deer into hamburger meat, you'd take that one fat coon and grind that meat up and then mix it with the deer meat to make something like hamburger, because the grease of the coon would be the fat content for that super lean deer meat and keep that deer meat from burning. So you're going to make it into basically hamburger. But that way it wouldn't burn, because you could take the super lean deer meat and grind it up for hamburger and put it in the pan, and it would just scorch. It will not cook like a hamburger patty. It'll just scorch and burn, because that you had to put all kinds of grease in it and ended up with a big old greasy burger. But if you would cut one coon into one deer, just like you should take beef fat or whatever and cut it in with the deer to make hamburger meat, you could make a pretty good substitution for hamburger meat. U43, years ago you did a video on bushcraft books and foraging. Have you changed your stance on foraging mushrooms? I have not. My hat's off to all these people that go out and actively do hunt and forage for mushrooms and such things, but it is just too big a risk for me personally. Now, of course, the morel, there is no poisonous look-alike, and they tell you if you cut it open, it's hollow, it's guaranteed. There's nothing else it can be. So yes, I have eaten morel. I have found morel, but on the most part, it is just in my neck of the woods. The vast majority of things I see are bad, and so it's just I stay away from that because I have so many other things that I could forage that aren't nearly as risky. And so I just have stayed away from that for that reason, because it's too big a risk. And I have friends that are really good at it. They love it. They go out every year and collect them and cook with them and etc. And more power to you, but not me. That's like the guys that go out and they eat the blowfish, fugu. Done right, it's a delicacy. Done wrong, you're in the ER. How good a night did the cook have? Ford Tractor, usually you're correct. Rabbit fever, wolves, stuff like First Good Freeze takes care of that stuff. It's one of the reasons I typically don't squirrel hunt or whatever until the winter. One of the reasons that I prefer to go and take my Catballer revolver and go for bunnies in January or February. The small game is in, and we've had plenty of cold by that time, and those type of things have just disappeared. Cold seems to take care of it. M3, glad to be a help. Outdoors with Sean, heading for the crotch of Florida. All right. We shall see. How big is it's the question. Garen, how about the dangers of parasites? Most of the time in wild game, when I open it up, I look at the liver. Is the liver nice and clean? If it's got spots on it or something, I'm not going to risk it. I look at the intestines. Are there things in the intestines, big dark spots or nubs in the intestines? That is normally the lungs, the same way. The heart, is the heart unusually enlarged? Those are indicators to me there's some sort of parasitic problem here I don't need to deal with. Wild game, I usually cook very thoroughly. I prefer to stew a lot of it slow and long. Rather than high temperature, I'll put it on a nice low simmer and let that sucker cook 2.5, 3 hours. Tastes better. And also, if there's any kind of parasitic, that time, temp, depth is going to get it. And I ain't got to worry about it. If there's anything in the blood or whatever, time, temp, depth usually has a time to purify that. And so I have not personally experienced any problems with using that method. Edgar talked about, catching geese, ducks, turkeys, things like that with a string of corn. Yeah. Yes, dances with empty pork and deer meat. Exactly. Cutting it in, working it. I like to age my deer meat. And so usually I would harvest the deer meat and then I would clean it, trim it, etc. And take the parts I'm not going to freeze that I'm going to eat now. I prefer to put in a bowl in the back of the fridge and give it up to a week to kind of dry age it a little bit. And it will tenderize it in many ways and soften it. And then when I cook it, it gets rid of a lot of that gamey taste. If the deer was shot non-running, non-excited, and he went down quickly, you don't have a lot of that gamey taste, the adrenaline. On the other hand, one that was shot where dogs were running and everything, you just about got to let it do that. Otherwise, it's going to have a gamey taste to it. And so I prefer to then take pork and use pork fat, fry it in pork, use bacon, a deer tenderloin, a backstrap with garlic wrapped in bacon, baked in that, and then use bacon drippings to make like a gravy to go over the whole thing. Really good. Tommy, have you thought about making a good bushcraft knife? I have a William Collins WC knives. That is my knife, dude. I do not see a need for Blackie to ever have another knife. As far as the knife, I have all kinds of knives. I love to try out new knives, new designs, but that's going to be my knife. And I know a lot of people say, well, if you got a bushcraft channel, you need to develop your own knife. William Collins done it. I mean, he really made the knife for me. And so to me, that is my knife. The Blackbird is my knife. Because he started out with that, and then the refinements that I gave him, that if I could change this knife, that became the Blackbird. And so if I was going to design one, that was the Blackbird. Okay, guys, we done went over 2 hours. Y'all need to keep up with me because I'll sit here and talk forever. Anything else right quick? What advice do you have for someone else starting out a YouTube channel? Now is a very good time. YouTube has changed how they're promoting stuff. Okay. Think of it like a casino. You know, they're always going to put the deck is stacked toward the casino. Well, for a lot of years now, it's been where subscribers, he who has the most subscribers gets the biggest hunk of the pie. They've done away with that now. And now it's click-through rate and watch rate and likes. That's what they're looking for, because they're shifting more toward the TikTok-like ideas, what they want to do. See? So if you're starting out a channel, now's a really good time because you get the channel going. Be honest, straight with your people. Talk on the topics that you understand, you know. Don't be afraid to admit you're human and say, look, I'm not that versed on this or whatever, because it makes you human. And we've got too many people out there in the industry that want to act like they are the end all be all. And that, like, they're not, you know, we all got to start somewhere. So just be honest with your crowd. And I really recommend that you do that. Start your channel and pick your topics. And before you come up, when you come up with a title, go search that title. Let's say Bigfoot in Arizona. See what pops up. Are there 20 other videos with that name? Well, that can be good or it can be bad. If you got a lot of videos with a lot of views, well, that throws you into that clump and it helps pull them to your channel. On the other hand, if there's nobody using that, that ain't a great thing as well, because that means people aren't searching for that. So start playing around till you find something that they are searching for, and it's something that you can work with, okay? Some of the best advice I can give you right now. Okay, guys. No, Edgar, we're not going to talk all night. Okay, Pink says, Blackie, rabbit fever is known as tulamenia. The CDC has several pages concerning it. That's a place to look. Thanks for the information, Pink. You are my lookup guy. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, it's been 205 minutes. Thank you very much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And I hope to plan on doing this again next Thursday night. Like I said, if I'm not going to have one, I'll post on my Facebook and tell you that we're not going to have it. And I'll try to post a video saying we ain't doing one tonight. But thank you very much. I really, bottom of my heart, thank you for all the support. And please, put more questions in the comments. If there's something after we get off or whatever, I will go back and read every one of these. And if I've said something in a video that just sparks an idea, save it for next week. Hit me up with it. I'll do my best to answer it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you guys safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.